One of the most surprising lessons I have learned after turning 60 is that peace does not always come from adding things to your life. More often, it comes from letting things go. And I am not just talking about clutter on the kitchen counter or clothes you no longer wear. I mean the quiet, invisible weight we carry for years, expectations, guilt, habits, roles we outgrew but never questioned. For a long time, I thought I had to hold on to it all. Be strong, be available, be useful, be busy. But over time, I started setting things down, quietly, gently. And something beautiful happened. I began to feel like myself again. Not the version of me that was always taking care of others or checking tasks off a list, but the version that sits still, breathes deeply, and finally feels at peace in her own skin. Today, I want to share with you 10 quiet things I let go of after turning 60. These may seem small on the surface, but each one lifted a hidden weight I did not know I was carrying. If you are in a season of life where you are craving more ease, more space, and more clarity, I hope you will find something here that speaks to you. Let us begin. 1. I let go of fancy dishes I never used. For most of my adult life, I had a cabinet filled with dishes I almost never touched. They were the kind you save for holidays, for guests, for special occasions. I had delicate plates with gold trim, tiny teacups I was afraid to chip, and serving bowls I only ever used once or twice a year. Some of them were wedding gifts. Others were inherited from family members I loved and missed. But mostly, they just sat there behind glass, gathering dust. I remember one day, I was putting groceries away, and as I closed the cabinet, I paused and looked at that fine china. And a question came to mind that I couldn't ignore. Why do I save the best things for everyone else and never for myself? That question sat with me all day. And the truth is, I did not have a good answer. I realized I had spent years making everyday moments feel less important than rare ones. I waited for something to be big or impressive before I let myself enjoy the good stuff. That week, I made a decision. I pulled down the china, cleaned everything, and chose a few meaningful pieces to keep, ones that reminded me of people or moments I wanted to remember. The rest, I gave away. And then I moved my favorite everyday dishes to the front of the cabinet. They were not elegant. Some didn't even match, but they made me smile. I started using my favorite mug for morning coffee, even if it had a little chip. I served dinner on the floral plate I loved, even if it was just soup and crackers. And something unexpected happened. I began to enjoy my meals more. I slowed down. I stopped saving joy for later. The dishes were never about the food. They were about permission. Permission to treat my own life as worthy. Not because something special was happening, but because I was here, alive, present. Every day became a little more beautiful when I stopped waiting for a reason to celebrate. That shift changed more than my dishes. It changed how I valued myself. 2. I stopped wearing shoes that hurt my feet. For a very long time, I chose my shoes based on how they looked, not how they felt. I wore heels that pinched my toes and left my feet throbbing at night. I wore stylish flats with no cushion, boots that rubbed my ankles raw, and sandals that looked cute but offered zero support. I told myself, this is just part of being a woman. I believed that if I wanted to look polished or graceful, a little pain was the price I had to pay. Even in my 60s, I found myself holding on to shoes I hadn't worn in years. Some were beautiful, expensive, or tied to memories. Others I kept out of habit. I would try them on now and then, take a few steps, feel the discomfort, and then still put them back in the closet, just in case. Just in case I went somewhere nice. Just in case I changed my mind. But just in case was always a way of holding on to a version of myself I no longer needed to be. One afternoon, After a long day on my feet at a family gathering, I came home, kicked off my shoes, and stared at the red marks across my toes. My feet were sore, tired, and frankly, I felt foolish. Why was I still doing this to myself? That night, I sat down with every pair of shoes I owned. One by one, I tried them on. And if they hurt, even just a little, they went in the donation pile. What I kept were shoes that supported me, soft leather with memory foam, slip-ons I could wear for hours, sandals with real cushioning. I even found a pair of sneakers that looked nice enough for Sunday brunch. I no longer cared if they were fashionable by someone else's standards. What mattered was how I felt when I wore them. And let me tell you, when your feet are comfortable, your whole body feels different. You move with ease, you stand longer, you walk farther, you smile more. Letting go of painful shoes was not just about comfort, it was about self-respect. I spent decades caring for others, standing on my feet for children, moms, and responsibilities. Now, it is my turn to be cared for, starting with something as simple as what I put on my feet. 3. I no longer decorate to impress. There was a time when I decorated my home with other people in mind. I chose furniture, colors, and wall art based on what I saw in magazines or what friends were doing. I arranged things carefully before guests came over and made sure everything looked just right. I told myself it was hospitality. I wanted my home to be warm and welcoming. But deep down, I was also trying to prove something. I wanted others to think I had it together, that I was stylish, current, successful. I thought that was what a grown woman's house was supposed to look like. But over time, that effort became exhausting. Every season brought new trends, new throw pillows, new color schemes. I spent money on decorations that meant nothing to me. I filled walls with prints I didn't even like, just because they matched the rug. My home looked fine, but it didn't feel like mine. It felt like a showroom. After I turned 60, my priorities started to shift. I began to care less about appearances and more about how things made me feel. I looked around my home and asked, does this reflect who I am now? Does this make me feel calm, grounded, joyful? I realized much of what I had was just visual noise. Pretty, yes, but not personal. So I started over, little by little. I took down art that didn't speak to me. I cleared shelves of decorative items that held no story. In their place, I added photos of my family, a quilt my mother made, and simple plants that made me smile every morning. I didn't follow any rules. I followed my heart. Now, when someone visits, they may not walk into a perfectly styled home, but they will walk into a space that feels loved, lived in, and real. And most importantly, I feel at peace here. Because I am no longer decorating to impress others. I am decorating to honor the life I have built. The laughter, the memories, the quiet mornings, the storms we survived. This house is not a statement. It is a sanctuary. 4. I let go of the pressure to be busy all the time. For most of my life, being busy was almost like a badge of honor. If I had a packed schedule, it meant I was doing something right. Appointments, errands, cooking, cleaning, taking care of everyone else. I rarely sat still, and if I did, I felt guilty. I told myself I was being lazy or wasting time. Somewhere along the way, I equated stillness with failure and busyness with worth. But deep down, I was tired. Not just physically, but emotionally. I was always rushing, always thinking about the next task, the next day, the next responsibility. Even on weekends or vacations, I had a running list in my head. And when someone asked how I was doing, I'd respond with, busy but good, as if being busy meant I was succeeding. After I turned 60, something shifted. One morning, I woke up and realized I had nowhere to be. The kids were grown. The house was quiet. There was no job calling me. And for a moment, I felt panic. Who was I if I wasn't constantly doing something? Then I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watched the sunlight fall on the floor, and listened to the birds. That moment, though small, felt like a revelation. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to simply be. No rushing, no background noise, no guilt. Since then, I've been learning to release the pressure to be productive every minute of the day. I've stopped glorifying busyness. I now schedule rest the same way I used to schedule appointments. I take naps without shame. I read books for hours. I say no to things that feel like too much. And you know what? The world kept turning. Nothing fell apart because I slowed down. In fact, things began to come together inside me. I found space to breathe, to reflect, to feel joy again. Not the loud, exciting kind of joy, the quiet kind. The kind that comes when you give yourself permission to stop doing and start simply being. Now, when someone asks how I'm doing, I sometimes say, peaceful, and I mean it. 5. I stopped saying yes when I wanted to say no. For most of my life, saying yes came easier than saying no. Someone needed help moving? I said yes. Someone needed me to babysit, cook, organize, plan, host, drive, or listen, even when I was exhausted? I said yes. I was raised to be kind, generous, and helpful, and I still believe in those values. But for a long time, I thought saying yes was the only way to be loving. But with every yes I gave the world, I quietly said no to myself. I said no to rest. I said no to my own plans. I said no to quiet evenings, to books I wanted to read, to small joys I kept postponing. And the more I said yes to things out of obligation instead of desire, the more drained I felt. I wasn't giving out of abundance. I was giving from an empty cup. Something changed after I turned 60. I began to recognize the weight of each yes. I started asking myself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? That one question changed everything. I realized I had the right to pause before agreeing. I had the right to check in with myself. I had the right to say no, even if someone else might feel disappointed. It wasn't easy at first. The guilt came like an old habit knocking on the door. But each time I chose rest over obligation, something amazing happened. My yeses became more honest, more joyful, more wholehearted. I stopped performing kindness and started living it, from a place of truth, not pressure. Now I say yes when I want to help, when I have the energy, when I feel called. And I say no when I need space, time, or simply because I want to. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They help you open up your life in ways that are healthier, softer, and more sustainable. Saying no isn't rejection. Sometimes it's the deepest form of self-respect. 6. I let go of clothes that no longer fit my life. For years, I held on to clothes that no longer fit, both physically and emotionally. My closet was full of items from jobs I no longer worked, events I no longer attended, and seasons of life that had quietly passed. There were blouses from my career days, dresses from weddings and anniversaries, shoes I used to wear to church every Sunday, and even workout clothes I kept just in case. I told myself I would wear them again one day. Maybe I would lose weight. Maybe I would go somewhere fancy. Maybe I would feel young again. But every time I opened my closet, I felt a sense of pressure, a feeling that I was somehow behind, like I was supposed to still be that version of myself. Then, One afternoon, I was putting away laundry and realized how little of what I owned actually brought me comfort or joy. So I did something I had avoided for years. I stood in front of my closet and took a long, honest look. One by one, I held each item and asked, "Do I wear this now? Does this feel like who I am today?" If the answer was no, I let it go. Some pieces were hard to release. A dress I wore on my 40th birthday, a scarf my daughter gave me in college, a jacket I bought when I thought I'd reinvent myself. But I realized something powerful. Letting go of clothes isn't about erasing memories. It's about making room for the present. Now, my closet is smaller, but more peaceful. I only keep what fits me, not just my body, but my life. I reach for clothes that feel good on my skin, that move with me, that match the slower, simpler rhythm I live by now. There's freedom in not chasing trends or sizes or identities that no longer serve me. Clothing should not be a museum of who we used to be. It should support who we are now and who we are becoming. 7. I let go of the fear of growing older. Growing up, getting older always seemed like something to dread. I remember hearing women whisper about age like it was a secret, a shameful thing. Wrinkles were something to hide. Gray hair meant you let yourself go. The message was clear. Aging was decline, and the goal was to fight it for as long as possible. I carried that fear into my 50s. I dyed my hair religiously. I avoided mirrors in certain lighting. I counted years like a slow march toward irrelevance. But deep down, I was tired. Not of aging, but of fearing it. I didn't want to be one of those women who disappeared quietly just because society stopped seeing her. Something shifted when I turned 60. I started noticing the strength in my hands, the same hands that had held babies, washed dishes, wiped away tears, and written cards for every holiday. I looked at my face and saw lines not of loss, but of life. I listened to my body and began to appreciate its wisdom, how it tells me to rest, how it no longer tolerates what it used to. I began to realize that aging is not a curse. It is a privilege. It is something not everyone gets to experience. And it comes with gifts, clarity, freedom, perspective. I don't chase youth anymore. I honor the journey that brought me here. I wear my age with softness, not shame. Do I still have moments of insecurity? Of course, but now, I meet those moments with kindness. I remind myself that I have nothing left to prove. I've lived, I've loved, I've endured, I've grown. And I'm still here, becoming more myself with each passing year. Aging isn't fading, it's refining. And I've never felt more whole than I do now. 8. I let go of the need to be understood by everyone. For a long time, I believed that being understood was the same as being loved. I thought that if someone really cared about me, they would automatically understand how I felt, what I needed, and why I made the choices I did. So when people didn't get it, when they judged me, disagreed with me, or simply didn't seem to hear me, I felt invisible, frustrated, or even betrayed. I would explain myself over and over, hoping that if I just said it the right way, they would finally get it. I wanted to be seen so badly, and sometimes I still do. But over time, I've learned that not everyone is capable of understanding your story, especially if they haven't lived anything like it. And that's okay. After 60, I began to realize something deeply freeing. Being misunderstood is not the same as being unloved. Some people may love you, but not understand you. Others may never understand, and that doesn't mean your truth is any less valid. I don't owe everyone an explanation. I don't need to win every argument or be approved of by every friend or family member. Now, I speak when I feel it matters, and I stay silent when peace is more valuable than being right. I trust my intentions. I trust my heart. I trust the life I've lived. And most importantly, I understand myself. That alone is more than enough. 9. I stopped feeling guilty for doing things just for me. As women, especially as mothers, wives, caregivers, we are taught early on to put everyone else first. Make sure the children are fed, the house is clean, the meals are cooked, the bills are paid, the birthdays are remembered. We are told that being selfless is a virtue, and it can be. But I took it so far that I lost track of myself. If I took an afternoon to read a book or go for a walk alone, I felt guilty. If I bought myself something nice, even something small, I would justify it by saying it was on sale or that I rarely spent on myself. I needed an excuse for self-care, like I didn't deserve it unless I earned it. That all started to change when my body and my heart began to show signs of wear. I was tired, not just physically, but soul tired. And I realized no one was going to give me permission to rest, to breathe, to enjoy my own company. I had to give that to myself. So I began doing things just for me, slowly at first. A solo lunch at my favorite cafe, a quiet walk without needing to call anyone, a massage, a soft robe, fresh flowers for no occasion at all. Not because I was lonely, but because I was learning how to love myself in the way I had always loved others, gently, fully, and without condition. These moments of just for me aren't selfish. They are sacred. They refill the well so I can continue to give without resentment or depletion. I now know that when I take care of myself, I have more peace to share, more patience to offer, and more joy to spread. I am not a machine. I am a woman. I am allowed to enjoy my life. 10. I let go of old grudges. Holding a grudge is like carrying a heavy rock in your pocket everywhere you go. You might forget it's there at times, but it weighs you down. It changes your posture. It steals your lightness. I've carried my share of those rocks over the years, some big, some small. Some were from people who hurt me deeply. Others were from misunderstandings that were never cleared up. I told myself I was justified, that I was right, that forgiveness was for people who didn't care as much as I did. But you know what I've learned with time? You don't forgive people because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve peace. Carrying anger, resentment, or old pain only keeps the wound open. It doesn't protect you. It poisons you. There was someone in my life, a family member, who hurt me with words she probably doesn't even remember saying. For years, every time I thought of her, my stomach tightened. I rehearsed what I'd say if I ever confronted her, but the confrontation never came, and the anger just sat there growing roots. One day, while journaling, I wrote the words, "I am tired of carrying this." That was the beginning of my release. I never got an apology. I never had the satisfying closure I imagined, but I forgave anyway, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Forgiveness doesn't mean you invite everyone back into your life. It just means you stop letting their choices control your peace. It means you let go of the story where you're always the one who got hurt. You close the chapter, not with bitterness, but with understanding. Understanding that you deserve to live free from that weight. Now, when I think of her, or anyone who's wronged me, I say a quiet prayer, not just for them, but for myself. That I may live lightly, that I may live freely, and that I may walk forward without carrying yesterday's burdens. If you've made it to the end of this video, I want to say something simple but important. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this quiet space with me. Letting go is not always easy. In fact, sometimes it's the hardest thing we do. But each time we release something that no longer serves us, a habit, a belief, a burden, we create space for something better to take root. something softer, something more true. These 10 things I've let go of weren't all dramatic. Most were quiet shifts, private choices. But together, they have changed the way I move through the world. I feel lighter. Not because life is perfect, but because I've stopped carrying things that were never mine to hold forever. And if you're in a place where you're ready to let go too, even just a little, I want you to know, you're not alone. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. Before we go, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's one thing you've let go of, big or small, that brought more peace into your life? Your story might be the gentle reminder someone else needs today. And if this video brought you even a moment of comfort, consider joining me here again. You can subscribe if you'd like, but more than that, just know you're always welcome here. No pressure, no performance, just honesty, softness, and shared wisdom. Until next time, take good care of your heart. You've carried it through so much. And now, maybe, it's time to carry it a little more gently.